So you're trucking along, writing your novel, but you can't get more than a few pages in before you start to cringe into oblivion with what you wrote. Listen, let's analyze this a little bit. Let's chop it up a little bit on this episode of the StoryPod podcast. Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. Okay, hello. Listen, obviously I'm walking. We've got steps to get, and I'm actually in the middle of recording another video, but I've paused on that for right now just to kind of redirect the brain sectional, you know what I'm saying? And we're gonna do something that we know we like, we being me, which is answering a writing question. But before we get to that, I almost forgot. You might not know who I am. My name is Ashley. I am your creative BFF, and I am a story coach. And if you have any questions for your story, or if you need any help, you can feel free to shoot me a message through my email, ash@creativebff.com, through my website, creativebff.com. Or now I kind of maybe would prefer if you shot me a message on Instagram, because I get those much quicker. And that is also yourcreativebff.com. I believe there's an underscore, your_creativebff, not .com on Instagram. It'll be linked below. But yeah, listen, let's just get right to the question. So the question comes from r/YA writers from So Frailty. And they say, teen writer here, I've been reading all my life, have published poetry and short stories in a few small magazines, and now hope to start writing my first novel. However, I'm having a really difficult time getting started. I feel like even the worst books I've read are better than what I have going on. Every time I think I have a good idea, I open a Google Doc and write a scene/the first scene. I can't get past 3 pages without cringing so much, I just delete everything. Honestly, the writing isn't even that bad. I just hate it so much for some reason because it's my own. It's hard to explain. This never happens with my short stories. Yeah, sometimes some things are cringe, but it's never that dramatic. I don't know what to do. I have a goal to at least finish a novel before graduation in 2 years, but my book, is going nowhere. I just thought I'd seek some advice here since I can't seem to get anywhere else. Genres I like to write in: contemporary YA, maybe fantasy. All right, so I did take some notes. I did think about this a little bit to see, okay, this person doesn't elucidate. That's the word that came to mind. Doesn't elucidate or expand or express what specifically. Well, they do kind of say that they just hate it because it's theirs. But we can, hopefully go a little bit deeper into pinpointing what specifically might be causing them to hate it and to cringe. And since they didn't specify what that is, I thought of a few particular areas and perhaps just have some tips of maybe what I would do if I was experiencing it. Because listen, I have written cringy stuff. I have another second episode of the cringy fan fiction coming up for you. Okay, you may have even seen it before this video goes out. But, it's just part of the process. So I will occasionally be looking over at my notes. Don't judge me. I still love you. We're still here. All right? But I just have to access my thoughts. So kind of trying to think about what could be making this person cringe. Could it be like imposter syndrome / lack of confidence / comparison? And what I'm thinking here, if that is the core, the root, you just got to write. Go ahead and finish that novel, that book. Choose the best idea that you at least find the most interesting, that you will be happy to spend time with, and just go ahead and write that novel and then bury it and never let anyone see it if that ends up being what you want to do, if you actually hate it so much after you finish it. But go ahead and just write. just finish it, achieve the goal. But also, I think that it would be good because it's very normal for creatives, regardless of what area of creativity you fall in, to not be able to look at their own work objectively, to have like this sense of perfectionism. And we're always the hardest on ourselves, right? Certain personality types who are creatives can be the hardest on ourselves, and we can see things that perhaps others don't see. So I would say get some other eyes on it. If you have people in your life who you can trust to both tell you the truth, but also not destroy your soul. If the truth is that, yeah, there are some issues here, here are some areas that I think you can improve the story or your writing or whatever have you. Or if you don't, you can get a writing coach, I'll give you one session. I'll read your stuff and I'll just give you one session and give you my perspective on your writing. And there are other story coaches, other writing coaches that you could probably even post your stuff in the Reddit forum and ask people for feedback and see what they think about it. Going the completely free route. There are plenty of wonderful people who will read your stuff, or snippets of it at least, and give you feedback on it without requiring payment. So that's an option. But just getting out of your own head and being able to see what other people think about it, I think could help give you a better perspective on your writing. And it could help tell you what you need to work on, but it could also be like, no, this is really good, and you just need to get out of your own way. And maybe it'll be, if that's the case, maybe it'll be that you never fully like something and feel super 100% confident in something that you put out and that you publish. But since publishing is your goal, these are not just journal entries for yourself. The perspective of the audience is what you're really going for, right? You want the audience to enjoy it. And oftentimes an audience will enjoy something that perhaps you don't think is the best. I can relate to this even just from an artist, drawing, painting, whatever perspective, where I can work on something and keep working on it because I find little things here and there that are not perfect, and I can work it to death. And then eventually you just have to tell yourself, okay, I'm stopping here. There are a million other things that maybe I could do to make it better, or those things might make it worse, but I just need to stop here. Sometimes finished is better than perfect. So those are my thoughts for that first possibility. Secondly, perhaps your writing feels amateurish to yourself. You are a teen, and that's not to say that there aren't teens who are not capable of writing beautifully, writing like they've been writing for 20 years. And maybe that's you. But it could also be that if you're comparing your stuff to some literary genius, or even just the worst stuff that you've ever read, perhaps you feel like your writing is amateurish, and that's totally normal, because perhaps it is. Just full disclosure. And so give yourself the time needed to develop and grow as a writer. Writing your novel is probably a great way to do that, and persevering and pushing through the suck and the discomfort and the cringe just to see a project finished and to learn from what could be a failure. Maybe it won't be a failure, but if it's a failure, you'll learn from that. You'll be able to set up your, what is the word I'm looking for? Your habits, the ways that you construct a story, your writing process, all of that kind of stuff. You'll start to know more about your voice as a writer, and, give yourself the freedom to be amateurish and to suck and to be cringe, and just know that you don't have to show that to anybody, but you do have to do it. You do have to push through. You do have to work, put in the hours and put in the practice to get to where you want it to be. And that It's just part of the game. It's normal. Submit yourself to it and allow it to take whatever time it takes. And maybe you'll find out, and I'm not trying to discourage, but maybe you'll find out that writing long form fiction is like just not your jam. Maybe you are a better short story writer than a novel writer, and that's just your lane. And there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you do better poetry, short stories, sequential art series, sequential art, sequential stories and things like that, episodic type stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. And you'll find that out as you write your novel and continue to write novels. And if you might just hate the process of writing a novel, maybe you get bored with staying with these certain characters and this certain plot line for too long. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to write every type of writing, right? So the next potential area of cringe is overused tropes and cliches. Maybe you're just overusing the tropes and cliches that are normal and expected in your genre. And, there's nothing new under the sun. We're all writing pretty much the same things in different ways, right? And every genre has its tropes and its cliches and certain things that the audience who is reading, picking up your book, tuning into your show, reading your comic, whatever the case may be, that they kind of expect to be there. And then you can surprise, remix these things and, find fun ways to retell these things and create characters that are wonderful that we want to follow through a story or a world that doesn't feel totally unique to us. But I think that as an audience, we're not expecting something 100% totally unique, especially as your audience ages and has seen more life and has read more things and consumed more media. You kind of get to see the same things over and over again. And then if you have a younger audience, you might be the first introduction to this genre that they have. And so you have the chance to kind of leave your mark on them and set their expectations for the genre. Maybe you'll make them love that genre for the rest of their lives. But at the end of the day, you're not going to come up with something that nobody has ever heard of before, okay, in the world. Okay, so that's fine. You just got to deal with it. However, you can limit yourself, limit the amount of tropes and cliches and make sure you're not overusing them. And that's going to be part of the work of you as a writer that you just have to do. And you learn as you go, as you write, as you read, what overusing looks like and what just right. That Goldilocks zone of cliches plus surprise, And then the last one is maybe the story starts to lose steam after a few pages, starts floundering. And because this writer specifically is accustomed to writing poetry and short stories, you just kind of got to tell the story in a much more condensed form. But when you're trying to structure a longer story, you have more space, more time to tell the story. And so maybe in a short story, you wouldn't necessarily need to focus on story structure, but it could be very, very helpful when you are composing a longer work to do back-end work to really understand your characters, really do some world building so we know what sandbox they're playing in, and really start structuring your story so that you know where you're going as you write. You have less possibility that you will reach a point that you're like, I don't know where this story is going at all, if you take the time to do some sort of story structure. You don't have to, if you don't like Save the Cat or the 3-act structure or whatever story structure is available, choose the one you like. Okay. Maybe even it's just, plotting out the whole story, getting, whatever those beats look like for you. Maybe you'll invent a different story structure. Probably not, but maybe you will, but it can help for you to know what path your characters are on. Where are we going? And then you'll be able to begin to create the scenes, the plot points, the circumstances, the conflict, the triumphs and the failures and all that kind of stuff that make up a story. And you won't get lost in the sauce. You know what I'm saying? So those were my main points. I'm not even going to try to TLDR because I don't really quite know how to TLDR those things. Should I try? Okay, I'm going to try. So if you're cringing, here are some possibilities for why this person is cringing. You've got imposter syndrome / lack of confidence / comparison to other writing. You've got your writing feels amateurish to yourself. You've got overused tropes and cliches. You've got your story floundering and losing steam after a few pages. And can I sum up all of the possible ways? You got to write, okay? Push through the suck, push through the cringe, and just put in those hours to write, and you'll start to develop your voice and your style. And that goes for if your writing feels amateurish. Keep reading and writing and allow yourself to take the time that it's going to take for you to become a better writer. And you never have to show anybody any of your other stuff, your early stuff, but just keep doing it and do a bunch of sucky drafts. And then eventually you'll start writing stuff that you like. If you're overusing tropes and cliches, that also goes into practice, practice writing, but try limiting yourself to in the number of cliches and tropes, but also understand that every genre has tropes and cliches that the audience expects. So you're not going to be surprising anybody. And also, there are no new stories. We're all just kind of telling the same stories in new ways that are interesting. And we like these stories, and that's why we keep coming to these stories. We want as an audience a fresh take on a story that we know. That's what we kind of want, right? And then if your story is losing steam after a few pages, try story structure, try working out your characters and really understanding them, try doing your world building prior to you just starting to write. And that might help you prevent getting stuck, the story losing steam, or you just kind of trailing off into the distance. So I guess that was kind of a TLDR, but whatever. Listen, have a great rest of your day. I am so glad that we got to spend time together, a little bit of time together. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your time. Hopefully this was kind of helpful to you. If not, listen, we're all just learning together. So listen, have a great day. I will see you next time. Go out and get some steps and some sun so that you can sleep better tonight. And I will see you next time, bestie.